Hey, it's Christina here. If you haven't met me yet, my name's Christina. I'm a herbalist, naturopath, GAPS practitioner, all sorts of other things, life coach, etc. I use all of my healing knowledge and wisdom in order to be able to help people change their lives and create different health for themselves. I'm going to talk a little bit about a topic that is quite pertinent for a lot of women. But it's one that isn't always talked about. And it's one that often by the time somebody gets to me, there's lots of stuff that's happened for them, which for me is often really sad. I'm just going to play with this and get it right. Otherwise it will annoy me. So by the time somebody gets to me, generally when it comes to hormonal stuff, by the time they get to me, they're often in their 40s, or, they might even be, 30s, 40s, 50s that they're in by the time they get to me, and they're talking about their hormones and they're sharing what's happening for them from that point of view. And by the time they've gotten to me, they've already been to a doctor. They've been through lots and lots of different things with the doctor. They've been, being put on things like oral contraceptive pill. They've, they may have had, if they've had endo, then they may have had scar removal. They may have been told that they have to have babies really soon. They may have been told a whole bunch of things. Same with PCOS. So somebody who's got polycystic ovarian syndrome, they're often, let's say you got polycystic ovarian syndrome when you were younger. You were very symptomatic when you first started to get your period, then one of the most common things that they do is put you on the pill. And then from there, they just continue that cycle of putting you on the pill. A lot of women that I know, so a lot of my clients, for example, when they've come to me with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, when they've come to me with PCOS, they've been told by their doctors already that they need to have babies young. Some of them have been told that they most likely won't get pregnant. And I've seen it literally change their lives and break hearts, because they believe that they're infertile. They believe that they can't have good functional female hormone health. They believe all these things that they have been told. And the things that they haven't been told, incredibly sad for me, because for many of them, they go through an experience where they haven't been really educated about how their cycle works. So they haven't been really educated about the purpose of the cycle, how the cycle works, and that's not normal to have really painful periods. That actually, other than maybe the first period or the first one after having a baby, other than those types of ones where you haven't necessarily had a period for a while, having a painful period is not really normal. It's normal to have some slight bloating and some discomfort. But anything beyond that tells us that there's some imbalances there in the hormones, that there's some stuff going on there that needs some support and some sorting out, and that the body itself needs more support. So for me, it's an incredibly challenging situation, because I often have women who have either had a hysterectomy because they've had all sorts of different reasons, because of course I've had a hysterectomy from my pregnancy situation that I had when I had Procreta. But for my clients, a lot of them, they've had hysterectomies because they've been bleeding so profusely that their iron is incredibly low, and the doctors have told them that that's their best option. They've had endometriosis and they're really over the pain and the scarring of that. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, sometimes they're being given full hysterectomies. So by the time they get to me sometimes, and this is the incredibly hard part for me, is I feel so bad for them, because nobody told them when they were young girls that what was going on for them was not right. And nobody told them how to actually fix it, because the way that they've been taught to fix it is to just put them on the pill. We're just going to give you an artificial hormone thing that's going to control your hormones, that's going to stop you experiencing those types of symptoms, and they're just being put on the pill. And they're not told that the pill doesn't just resolve it. It's not going to magically take away why you've got polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's not going to magically take away why you've got endometriosis or anything like that, because it's not fixing why you've got it in the first place. And we haven't asked enough questions. We haven't asked enough questions in the sense of asking, why is this taking place? How can I resolve that, instead of just masking it with a medication? And I know that this is something that my fellow practitioners struggle with as well, that often we're kind of the last resort. Like, people come to us as their last resort, where they go, I've done the medical thing, I've done the operations, I've done as much as I possibly can from that field, and there's not anything for me. It's not resolving it. The only option I've got is to remove some body parts. And even that doesn't resolve it. So for example, if you've got endometriosis, having a hysterectomy actually doesn't take away why you have always had that endometriosis. And endometriosis has the ability to grow in other parts of your body as well. So even having the hysterectomy doesn't resolve it. The hysterectomy can also just create new spaces for endometriosis to grow. And endometriosis tissue can grow anywhere. There are reports of it growing on lungs, there are reports of it growing inside the cavity of where the uterus was. So it doesn't actually take away the problem. It doesn't actually fix the problem. It masks it. And so the problem manifests in other ways. So let's start with talking about the period. And if any of this is resonating with you, or if you've got any of these conditions, pop it down below. I'd love to answer any questions that you might have while I'm on talking about this. And I haven't planned anything. I was just, had a mentoring session where I'm working with another naturopath, telling her how I would approach a particular case that she's got. And I was so gut-wrenchingly upset for the woman going through that experience, because it's just one thing after another, and nobody told her 20 years ago that what was happening was not right, and that there were other things that you could do before altering your body to actually try and fix it. And I'm not making any judgments on anybody who has altered their body, who, in the sense of having a hysterectomy, based on the support and the knowledge that they've been given, and of course their experience as well. So when we have a period, women, for us, it is this extra thing that we have. So men don't, of course, have a period, and so they don't get this release that women get. So of course the period is actually this deep cleaning cycle. And so the egg releases, and if it's no fertilization or no implantation, the egg releases, the blood comes off the wall, and of course it's this big cleansing process. So we know that that's what happens from that point of view. But one of the things that we miss out on talking about is that actually the period is a detox pathway. So for women, it's one of the ways our body is able to actually clean out and clear out as quickly as possible some of the toxins that are actually in our blood. And so it utilizes that pathway quite effectively in actually helping to release the toxins that are circulating. And so when we have some experiences like PCOS, or we have endo, or we have really heavy menstrual cycles that don't necessarily have a particular name attached to them, so even the similar, when we've got, like, each of them are slightly different, and so they present slightly different and the symptoms are slightly different, but the overall philosophy is the same. And so our period is a detox pathway. And so when we're experiencing some irregularity in our period, whether it's too heavy, or we're getting some cysts, or we're getting some endometriosis, when we're getting those things, then one of the feedbacks is that our liver is actually working really hard, because the liver is one of the powerhouses that we have that breaks down, recycles, and metabolizes hormones. So if that liver is working really hard, or we've got a compromisation in that liver, so let's say you have a gene mutation like MTHFR, then your liver isn't working as effectively as it should. So it has some compromises there. It's not like the powerhouse in regards to it's optimal. It has some extra struggles and some extra issues if you've got something like MTHFR. The same is if you're putting in a lot of toxins. So a toxin can be anything from, the chemicals that we have in our household, the things that we might be breathing in, sprays that are used on our food, all of that type of stuff. It's pretty clear that those are some of those toxins. But a toxin can also be a food that you're eating that is not compatible with your body. So if you eat something that you're not able to break down, that you're not able to utilize, that also contributes to your river of toxicity. And so anything that comes in that way that adds to that river of toxicity then needs to be removed by the liver at some point. And so if we think about our liver as that detoxing organ, it has a certain percentage of capacity depending on what's going on for it, how healthy the organ is, and if you've got some of those mutations like MTHFR. So it has a capacity, and when it's reached its capacity, it calls out to accessory organs or accessory detox organs to help it do that. My kids are starting to get a little bit noisy now. Hopefully it's not too bad for you. But it calls out to accessory organs. So it's like, hey, lungs, can you like come over and like help me out, get rid of some of these toxins? And like, hey, kidneys, can you like flush some more through your pathway? And skin, can you push some more out through your pathway? And bowels, can you get rid of some more toxins as well? And if you're a female, hey, period, can you get rid of some of these toxins for me? Give me a second. Guys, shush. See if that works. They're having an argument. Okay, so our liver is that detoxing organ. If it's overflowing, if it's got too much jobs to do, it's not optimized because of some mutations and so on that's going on in your body, that is going to push toxins out those other pathways. So when we're experiencing things like eczema, often that is an overloading of the liver and the skin is taking the brunt of that. And then the skin may be something that is one of our nurture points. That might be a genetic sort of weak area for us. Or the lungs, if we're experiencing some asthma, that can be an overload of toxicity that is then needing to travel through that CO2 pathway through the lungs. So I hope you're getting the picture. So it uses those accessory organs to help it. And the period is one of those accessory organs. So if we're finding that we've got extremely heavy periods, or we've got really tender breasts, and, we're looking like we're, 6 months pregnant when we've got our period, if we're having any of those types of symptoms that are connected to things like endometriosis and PCOS and so on, and of course, remember, I'm being generalistic because I'm talking about a bunch of conditions, not just one of them. If we're experiencing those symptoms, then we have to start looking at what's happening in the liver. And if we're looking at the liver, we have to start looking at what's happening from a toxic in, toxic out pathway. And that is completely overlooked when we go down this medicalized pathway of looking at the period as a problem and looking at the period and the, over functionality of a period. So let's say it's heavy. Let's say you're experiencing a lot of those symptoms that I just mentioned. Looking at that as the problem and just trying to fix that. And they essentially fix that by putting you on some sort of contraception, so that you don't bleed, so that you are on the pill, so that your hormones are regulated, because it's perceived that the hormones are the complete problem when they're not. And we haven't asked the full question, why is this happening? And if I'm just masking the symptoms, where is that going to go? So if we're masking the symptoms, so let's say we've got the pill and we're masking the symptoms of that detox pathway not functioning the way that it should, not being able to metabolize or break down or recycle estrogen effectively, and then we've got too much estrogen, progesterone isn't able to come in because estrogen is the big bossy sister in the cup of hormones, and so it doesn't let anybody else come and play. When it's hanging around, it doesn't allow space for other people to come and play. So when we're looking at it from that point of view and we just mask those symptoms, the problem still exists. The problem has not actually gone away. The problem is still going on underneath. And then it presents in different ways. So if that pathway is blocked, it's going to present in things like some, gut issues are happening. Some arthritis might start developing. All sorts of other different conditions from a physical point of view start to develop because we've blocked the pathway where the body's getting rid of a lot of those toxins. We haven't resolved the toxicity within the body. We've just masked it and blocked it. So now the toxins have got to find another method out. And that can often be in storage. So often if you're gaining weight, especially, you know, around the middle and on the thighs, it can be that we're storing the hormones instead of moving them out. So our fat cells are storing them to kind of keep them at bay so that they're not, you know, continuously triggering. So we end up gaining more weight. Our body can purge those hormones in another way, all those toxins in another way, by giving us, you know, pushing it out through the sweat glands. So we end up sweating more, or having odorous BO. We can have it come out in all sorts of different ways, and it presents in all sorts of different ways. And then often what I find is that then women come off the pill because they want to get pregnant, or they come off the pill because they're just like, I'm done with doing this and I want to do something different. And they'll get the tidal waves of, you know, re-establishing hormones and periods and all of that cycle taking place. But at no point has anybody really started to concentrate and focus on what's really going on, and is there anything actually that we can do to help ourselves. And of course, that's where working with a practitioner can be really helpful to help you sort of unravel that whole situation. And the amount of times that I've had women that have being told that they've got one of these conditions. So for example, coming to mind, I've got a patient who has polycystic ovarian syndrome, and she was on the pill for 18 years and told that she couldn't have babies, and, you know, that she had to have her babies early or she wouldn't be able to have babies, and she didn't have her babies early, so she believed that she couldn't have babies. And so what she did then was kind of sabotage her relationships, because there was this underlying belief that she was broken and that there was something wrong with her, and that it was unfair for a guy that she loved to have to choose between having her or being able to have his own children. And so she would sabotage her relationships because she really loved the guy and she didn't want him not to ever have his own children, because she'd believed that she couldn't have children because at 18 a doctor had told her that she wouldn't be able to have them if she didn't have them in the next couple of years, which is really devastating to see. And thankfully she, you know, had somebody that said, hey, go work with Christina, and we were able to resolve the problem for her so that she could, you know, balance her hormones, and that things were starting to work really well for her, and now she's expecting her first baby. But she could have continued that cycle for another 18 years and never had children, based on some information that she was given very early in her, you know, fertile years about what was going on for her body. And so it's really interesting to me to see that pattern, but it's also really hard and sad for me to see women go through that experience of not knowing what's going on, not knowing that there's other alternatives and that there's things that they can try. Especially diet absolutely is number one on my list of working with those problems. Especially, you know, that's where I would use some hair analysis to help us figure out what foods need to kind of be removed from your body, fix the gut, get that working, and really work on supporting that liver and detoxification. And using some specific herbs that help the liver metabolize excess estrogen and, you know, help the body to produce more progesterone if it needs to do that. Actually, it often doesn't. It doesn't often actually need extra progesterone. Not that it never does, but, you know, often that's generally not the case. Generally, it's that there's too much estrogen. The cup is full of estrogen, and when the cup's full, there's no room for progesterone to come in. You can keep pouring progesterone in, but if the cup is already full, no more is going to go in that cup. It's just going to keep pouring out. And so, you know, fixing those things and supporting the body with those things can do so much in regards to helping women with their hormonal displacement and helping them to have a beautiful cycle again. I think one of my favorite things to happen when I'm working with women long term on these things is helping them understand their cycle, because we have, you know, 2 ovaries. So each ovary can produce different hormonal levels. Like often women will have one ovary that is more functional than the other ovary. And when you see their patterns, so when we do some basal metabolic temperature charting, when we test their temperature as soon as they wake up in the morning, we can start to see the pattern of their hormones, and we can start to see this pattern of, you know, I can't tell you that's your left ovary or that's your right ovary, but we can see that there's definitely, like, there's this cycle. Oh yes, this looks like that dicky cycle that you get, and this looks like that really spot on beautiful cycle. And you know, if we're trying to get pregnant, let's try and get pregnant on that cycle, because that one's going to work really well. But they can see that, and they can learn that about their body, and they can pick up on that really quickly. And the other element is, like, when they get to that point of recognizing that, oh, I just got my period, and they didn't have any warning. Like, they didn't have the normal things that would make them go, oh my God, my period's coming. So they weren't, like, you know, attacking their husbands. They weren't, or the people around them. They weren't, like, angry as all heck. They didn't have really sore breasts that might stimulate, you know, might be an indication for them. They didn't have a huge amount of bloating. It just came, and they went, oh my God, okay. So, you know, I love seeing women get to that point where they start to understand their cycles, and they start to understand their bodies really well, and start to see their body's signs on, you know, fertility, their signs on what's going on, where they're at in their cycle, all of that type of stuff. But also realizing that it doesn't have to be an extremely painful process. It gets to be something that actually can be quite different, and not a lot of women have experienced that all the time. So Hayley's saying, how do you fix it? Well, it depends on what you're trying to fix, Hayley. There are some basic steps, and of course removing toxicity in your home is absolutely top of it. So you want to get rid of, like, chemicals from your house. So you want to pick good eco-friendly but also low tox cleaning options, household options, personal product options. You want to pick those low tox things. So you want to reduce the toxicity within your home, because that's where you spend a lot of your time, even if it's just to sleep. Like, even if you get up, you go to work, and you come home and you go to sleep, you're still spending a considerable amount of time in your home, and that's an area that you can often control much more than you can, say, your work office. So your work might have, you know, their own cleaner, and they're not necessarily eco-friendly and all of that type of stuff. You may have very limited control over that, but you can control a lot more about what happens in your own household. So first step is really starting to get rid of the toxicity and lowering the toxicity that you're exposed to. And then, of course, looking at your foods. Like, are you eating nice, clean foods that are actual whole foods, as opposed to things that have been processed and have got chemicals in them and preservatives in them and all of that type of stuff? That's the next step. And then for me, I would be, as a practitioner, I would be looking at doing some hair testing there, or hair analysis, to kind of figure out, are there some foods that we need to take out for you? And then looking at the gut repair, all of which going alongside with some herbs that are really beautiful at supporting that liver, really beautiful at supporting the body in creating a good cycle as you fix and as you find the diet that works really well for them, and do that repair that needs to take place. But then on top of that, we tweak everything based on A, the health history of the person, and B, their actual individual needs and what conditions they're experiencing as well. And, you know, sometimes we're working alongside doctors too, because there's, you know, often some other stuff. So if they've got polycystic ovarian syndrome, they may be more prone to things like diabetes and stuff. So, you know, we're working alongside what's happening there and cleaning and tweaking everything as we go. So it's not necessarily a really quick process. It's not like, hey, next month we're going to get rid of this. It generally takes a good couple of cycles to even start to get on top of it. But once you find the right keys and the right foods for that individual person, it can go quite quickly after that. So that's kind of a little rant from me, because I get to the point of like, you know, sometimes my heart wants to bleed for women from the experiences that they've been through in their lives, based on something that, you know, I don't want to say it, but I kind of do, that a man who has not experienced a period, you know, has decided, you know, and this is not always the case, but, you know, for a lot of the women that I work with who are now in their 40s and 50s, it was generally a male doctor who's never experienced a period, giving them a tablet to say, here, take this. No, it won't hurt you. No, there's nothing wrong with it, and it'll fix the problem. Well, it didn't fix the problem. It just masked a problem. And the problem always was there, and it didn't go away by taking a tablet. because it was still there. The reason why it was started in the first place was still there. So there we go. There's just my little talk today. I hope you get the help that you need to get if you need to get it. I hope that you talk to your daughters about their body so that they can understand that if it's incredibly painful, if they're not able to exercise, like, you know, we all don't really want to exercise on that first day really very much, but if they can't even walk, they need to take heavy painkillers or any painkillers, then there's something wrong. And that's a, you know, it's a good opportunity for them to get to know their bodies and to get to understand it and be educated, because every woman's body is slightly different, and every woman needs to tap into their individual cycle and their individual patterning. And for me, I look at this as an opportunity to engage them in conversations about how their body works, talk to them about how important food is to their bodies, but also being able to show them really early on that it doesn't have to be a horrible, horrible thing. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's not something we love to do all the time. But it doesn't have to be devastatingly painful. They don't have to be, you know, consistently getting iron injections and things like that to be able to stay on top of it. That's not normal. That can be supported and can be helped. And it's just about seeking the right kind of care and the right kind of support to help you with that. All right, that's it for me today. I hope you have an amazing day. Sleep well. I hope you have a great Saturday. Bye for now. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments or send me a message if you want to start working on this stuff. All right, bye for now. See you later.